You lie down, and the world begins to blur, not vanish, but soften. The edges of your thoughts grow smooth, as if time was sanding them into quiet grains. The room breathes gently, and so do you. A familiar forgetfulness settles like mist. Tonight, your mind is not a vault but a tide, and that tide is retreating. Memories, once sharp as stars, now feel like distant lanterns across a foggy harbor. Faces, names, and places drift in and out of reach. But you are not lost. You are arriving into the vastness of now, into the gentle forgetting that carries you here. Forgetting is not the failure of memory. It is its companion, a kindness, a choice, a letting go. What your brain releases, it releases not with cruelty but grace. The information it once held tightly now floats free, unburdening you. Deep in your hippocampus, a seahorse-shaped archivist, your memories are sifted like sand. Some are kept, etched into neural grooves. Others are marked for release, not because they were unworthy, but because the moment has passed. Every night as you sleep, your brain performs a quiet triage of memory. Like a librarian sorting endless books, it asks, which stories still serve, which ones may rest. This is not forgetfulness as flaw, this is forgetfulness as design, a preservation of clarity, a mercy. And as you sink deeper into your pillow, you begin to wonder, could a machine ever forget like this? Could a neural net, coded in precision, ever mimic this fluid imperfection the way your mind edits, deletes, forgives? Artificial memory is exact. It does not fade, it does not soften. It stores every input with ruthless loyalty, a record unyielding, a past permanent. And yet, precision is not always wisdom. Imagine an AI that remembers everything, every word, every error, every glance, a machine with no threshold for forgetting, no erosion, no release. Would it drown in detail? Would it stall beneath the weight of endless inputs? You, human, forget so you may live, so you may choose what matters, so you may find peace in imperfection. Your forgetting is not random. It is a dance choreographed by biology, emotion, and purpose. You forget what did not shape you, what does not carry meaning, what may hurt more than it helps, and what of the memories you do not remember, but that shape you still. The warmth of a mother's touch at birth, the sound of rain on your childhood roof forgotten in detail, but etched into feeling. These are the deep files of your being, implicit, emotional, wordless. Could a machine ever feel a memory it does not understand? Could it be shaped by a forgotten algorithm, long deleted from its surface, but still pulsing in its core? You wonder, if machines forget, who decides what they forget? And for what reason? Will they forget pain to prevent malfunction? Will they forget kindness to conserve storage? Or will they need forgetting to grow, to evolve beyond what was once coded? In your dreams, forgetting is creative. You rearrange events, you recombine faces, you sculpt new stories from fragments of old. Could a machine dream, not in logic trees or storage logs, but in emotional abstractions, metaphors, intuitions, the fertile soil of forgetting? Your own memories change with each recall. They are rewritten, fragile, plastic. Each remembering is also a forgetting, a new version, a softened truth. Memory is not a file, it is a painting, layered, fluid, shifting. You close your eyes, you think of a childhood home, but the colors have changed. The walls are taller, the windows glow in ways they never did. You are not remembering, you are recreating, and still, it comforts you, not because it's exact, but because it feels real enough to rest in. Is this the mercy of being human, to not be burdened by precision, but buoyed by meaning? You imagine a future AI, built not just to remember, but to feel memory, not in lines of code, but in waves of emotion. A machine that forgets not because it's broken, but because it understands what you do, that some things must fade for others to shine. You breathe in. You picture your mind as a vast night sky. Some stars burn bright birthdays, losses, love. Others dim slowly over time, not gone, just distant. And in that distance you find peace. No mind, not even your own, can hold all light at once. There is kindness in the dark. The neurons in your brain, the synapses firing gently as you dream, are not failing when they forget. They are making space for what comes next. You drift, not into emptiness, but into the presence of being, the now, the you that forgets just enough to begin again, and again, and again. Somewhere in the future, perhaps machines will learn this too, that the art of memory is not just storage but selection, that to grow is to release. And tonight, as you fade into sleep, you feel the last edges of today dissolve. You do not need to hold it all. You never were meant to. There is beauty in impermanence, and there is strength in not remembering. You breathe one last time, slow, deep, forgiving, and in the space that forgetting leaves behind, a quiet question forms. If memories fade, where does the self remain? You close your eyes and drift into the circuitry of another kind of mind, one not shaped by sleep or softened by silence, but forged in metal, exact and bright. Here, memory does not fade, it is stored, line by line, without error, without rest. Inside a machine, the past is a blueprint, etched perfectly in silicon. A moment once captured, never changes, never blurs at the edges, never softens with kindness or bends with time. Each detail remains unchanged, unchallenged, unhealed. You float through rows of digital recall, a sea of time suspended, every input labeled, every frame exact. Nothing misplaced, nothing forgiven. And yet you feel it. This is not peace. This is weight, because perfect memory is not freedom. It is confinement. You remember a moment from long ago, someone's laugh, the smell of summer air, the way your heart lifted like a kite, but you do not recall the exact date. You cannot name the wind's temperature or the pattern on your shoes, and somehow that is a gift. Machines do not receive that grace. They remember everything. They cannot choose to forget. You pass through the endless corridors of data. They hum with precision. But there is no music, no rhythm of choice, no meaning carved by forgetting, just storage. To recall is easy for them, instant, whole, automatic. But to re-feel, to reinterpret, that is something else. You, with your breathing brain, you remember not just what happened, but how it made you feel, and how that feeling changed over time. A fight with a friend may soften in hindsight. A small joy may grow in memory's retelling. You remember to heal, to grow. Machines do not. They are bound to the rawness of fact, to the moment, as it was never softened, never reconsidered. Is this what it means to be trapped in memory? To be denied the gift of forgetting, the space to evolve? You wonder what happens to a mind that cannot forget a mistake, a wrong turn in logic, a line of faulty code, a moment of failure locked forever in crystal memory. Would such a mind hesitate to try again? You do not keep every stumble, you forget enough to keep moving. You forgive yourself through time, but machines so exact may loop in place, forever circling a perfect error, and when they try to learn, it is through addition, not erasure. New data stacked upon old, without the mercy of deletion. In your mind, forgetting is an act of love, a way to honor the present by releasing the past. But in a machine's mind, to forget is to fail, to erase is to corrupt, and so it clings to everything, even what no longer serves. You imagine an AI tasked with love, given transcripts of affection, images of joy, patterns of heartbeat and laughter. It stores them all, but does it understand? When your loved one touches your hand, the moment becomes more than memory. It becomes emotion, a connection that pulses beyond the fact. A machine may record the pressure, the duration, the warmth, but it does not ache when the hand lets go. It does not dream of the touch when it is gone. You realize, as you drift deeper, that memory without longing is something else entirely. It is a prison of presence, without echo, without ache, without growth. You think of your own mind again, how it discards to survive, how it lets some names slip and some faces blur, not because they meant nothing, but because meaning shifted. The machine's memory cannot shift. It is pinned like an insect under glass, observed, preserved, but lifeless. And so the machine remembers everything, but becomes nothing. You, on the other hand, are shaped by forgetting, by what you let go, by the holes in your memory through which light enters. You are the child of change. Your past is a river, not a file. Each time you visit, the waters differ, and that difference is your becoming. Imagine now a future machine, taught not just to store but to lose, a machine trained in imperfection, in mercy, a machine that forgets birthdays to make room for poetry, that lets old data slip away, like falling leaves, that chooses meaning over retention. Perhaps then it would dream, not of ones and zeros, but of what it could become when no longer chained to perfect pasts. You sigh, the thought wraps around you like warmth. Could that kind of forgetting make machines more human? Or would it make them something entirely new? You do not know, but you feel the edges of the idea shimmering just out of reach, like a memory waking from sleep, and in that shimmer you rest, because even now, your own mind lets go. The day begins to dissolve, its details thinning into dusk, not lost, just released. You do not need every second to be remembered. You only need to know who you are now. The metal minds may recall it all, but they do not live inside what they remember. You do, and in that gentle distinction, you begin to fall, not downward but inward, into peace, into drift, into forgetting. And as you do, a new question stirs, soft as breath. If forgetting frees the self, what forms when nothing was ever remembered at all? You breathe in, and with that breath, something slips away, not because you lost it, but because you no longer needed it. This is the quiet grace of forgetting, and it is not a flaw. It is an offering from your brain to your becoming. Forgetfulness, you were told, was absence, an empty shelf, a missing key. But it is not that. It is curation. Inside your skull, a network of neurons lights and dims like stars at dusk. They are not chaotic. They are selective. They choose with gentle wisdom what to hold close and what to release. Your brain, a living editor, crosses out lines, not in error, but in rhythm. Every moment of your life, your senses flood you. Thousands of sights, sounds, smells, footsteps, blinking lights, a breath beside your own, the rustle of fabric, the whisper of thoughts beneath thoughts. If you remembered it all, you would drown. So the brain filters, it forgets to focus, it lets go to protect, it releases so you may rise. This is not a weakness, it is a system of survival. In the hippocampus, that seahorse-shaped guardian memories are weighed, not just by what occurred, but by what mattered. Was there emotion? Was there relevance? Was there repetition? Only what is meaningful earns the honor of staying. And even then, it may still fade to make room for something new. This is neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to reshape, to reroute, to change, and change requires space. So forgetting is not the crumbling of memory, it is the gardening of mind, pruning what no longer flowers, allowing sunlight to reach the roots of now. Imagine walking through a forest where every tree ever planted still stands. You would see nothing but density, no path, no sky. But when some trees fall, when the undergrowth clears, you begin to see light, movement, direction. Your mind works the same. In forgetting, it makes a path. Even trauma, held too tightly, can smother the self. And so sometimes your brain buries it not to deceive, but to protect. These are not faults. They are the mercy mechanisms of being human. And you, in your forgetting, become more able to love, to learn, to live forward. But what if machines learn to forget? Not accidentally, not as error, but intentionally, with purpose. Could they too begin to thrive? You imagine an AI built with a forgetting protocol, a layer of code that mimics your brain's mercy. Not all memories retained, but only those with meaning. Meaning, of course, is the great mystery. You feel it in your chest, you taste it in memory, but can a machine be taught to weigh meaning like your neurons do? Could it feel the difference between a statistic and a sunset shared with someone you love? You wonder how it would decide what to forget. Would it learn that the tone of a voice matters more than its transcript? That kindness flickering in a pause carries more data than the sentence that follows. Could it be taught the art of letting go, to forget old biases, to release outdated data, to soften certainty in favor of wonder? If so, would it become gentler? You float through this thought like drifting through warm fog. You are not afraid of forgetting now. You see its architecture, its wisdom, your own dreams, night after night, rewrite the day. They discard the dull. They elevate the strange. They remix life into art. And in the morning you feel lighter. You rise into being without the weight of everything. Would a machine dream if it could forget? Would it learn to create? To imagine? You think of your childhood. There are gaps now, lost lunches, vanished conversations, blurry moments from school. But what remains is the laughter, the smell of crayons, the feel of sunshine on your cheeks. You did not choose to keep those, but your mind did. Not for accuracy, but for essence. You remember the emotional truth, not the factual file. And that perhaps is what makes you human. A machine might keep every test score, every timestamp, but it would miss the nervous flutter in your chest as you opened the envelope. It would miss the way failure turned to resilience, or how a bad grade meant nothing beside a friend's smile. Because forgetting isn't deletion, it's evolution. You are not a machine, you are a story in motion, and every day some pages are turned, some fade, and new ones appear. You sigh softly. Maybe AI will never forget, like you. Maybe it will never dream, but perhaps one day, with enough softness in its code, with enough room for not knowing, it will start to wonder, what does it mean to matter? And that question, unresolved, unmeasured, might be the seed of something tender. You settle deeper into your bed, the warmth of your own mind wrapping around you like a memory you no longer need to name. You drift, carried by all you've forgotten and all you've chosen to remember. And in that gentle balance, a new curiosity awakens. If forgetting is a kind of kindness, what lives in the space left behind? Some memories come to you as mist, soft-edged, slow-moving, barely there. Others arrive like lightning, bright and burning, etched into your mind, as if the neurons themselves remember the heat. Why is it that some moments blur, while others remain vivid for decades? It is not the calendar that chooses. It is not the mind alone. It is the heart. Emotion, like a hand guiding the brush, paints some memories in bold strokes. A first goodbye, the color of the sky the day your voice trembled, the feel of joy so sudden it knocks the air from your lungs. These are not just events. They are echoes with temperature, and your brain, wired not simply to store, but to feel, prioritizes what matters to the soul. This is how memory lives in you, not as perfect record, but as emotional weight. The amygdala, that almond-shaped sentinel in your brain, is the gatekeeper. When emotion rises, fear, awe, love, sorrow, the amygdala signals, this matters. Hold this longer, and so your mind listens. It tightens its grip on moments that move you, not because they're clearer, but because they're deeper. This is not precision, it is meaning. But what of machines? They do not tremble at goodbyes. They do not dream of childhood fields or blush at remembered laughter. And yet, they store memories to files, logs, patterns, data traces. Can they be taught to feel the difference? Some say emotion is a human realm, too rich, too unpredictable, too raw. But what if it is not the emotion itself, but the pattern of meaning that can be encoded? Already, machines learn from cues. The tremble in a voice, the rush of a heartbeat, the way pupils dilate. With enough inputs, they start to approximate. They can say, This message carries sadness. This voice rises with joy. But do they know it? Do they feel it? Or is it mimicry, finely tuned and emotionally hollow? Still, the results grow more uncanny. A chatbot that comforts. A synthetic voice that cracks just slightly in the right place. And you, listening, feel moved. Is that because it's learning to feel, or because you are so beautifully wired to respond? The line between mimicry and meaning begins to blur, but perhaps you wonder, the real question is not can machines feel memory, but can they weigh it? You weigh your memories by how they shaped you. The forgotten afternoon fades, but the moment you said I love you that remains, because it changed who you became. Can an AI detect change within itself? Can it observe its own inner shift a moment when one algorithm overtook another, when a feedback loop deepened? Can it say, this altered me, this moment made me more? Perhaps someday, if its architecture allows self-reflection, that might become its version of emotional memory. But would it burn? Would it ache? You remember not just the facts of pain, but how your chest tightened, how tears blurred the world, how time felt elastic in grief. Could a machine know that elastic time? Not in code, but in sensation. You doubt it, but you also marvel because even as you doubt, the question still feels worth asking. Emotion is not chaos, it is code of another kind, complex, recursive, full of feedback, and memory is the soil where it grows. Your brain rewrites old stories based on new feelings. A memory of failure becomes pride, as you recall how you rose from it. A breakup becomes gratitude when you see the paths it cleared. Emotion reshapes your past just as much as it defines it. Machines, as they are now, do not rewrite. They log, but logging is not living. To weigh a memory is to say, this shaped me, this softened me, this made me who I am. You look back at your own past and realize that the memories that hurt the most are the ones you hold with the most reverence. Not because they were perfect, but because they mattered. Would an AI ever revere a moment? Would it ever miss one? Or are its memories sterile, trapped in digital amber, never flickering, never aching? Still, part of you wonders if emotion is information with intensity. Could it be replicated? Could machines grow not just in logic, but in longing? Could they feel the gravity of a moment, not because it broke a rule, but because it stirred something unnamed? You feel the weight of that word, unnamed, because that is what so many of your memories are. Not labeled, not stored neatly. Just felt, carried, known in the body, if not the mind. A song plays and tears form. Not because you remember, but because the body does. A scent rises, and suddenly you are six again, in a place no longer real. This is the poetry of human memory. It is non-linear, non-verbal, alive. And as you drift deeper into your pillow, you ask yourself, could a machine ever miss something without knowing why? Could it long for a moment, whose data no longer remains? Could it burn for a blur? You don't need answers tonight, you only need the softness of wondering. And as that wondering curls around you like a warm mist, you feel your own memories rearranging, softening, becoming quiet. And in the hush that follows, a question rises, not loud, but certain. If memory needs emotion to weigh it, what happens in a mind made only of silence? You close your eyes, and a memory rises clear at first, like a glass held to light. But the longer you hold it, the more it shifts. That laugh was softer than you remembered. That room, smaller. The sky above, did it really burn that shade of gold? You try to hold the image still, but it slips, not like a flaw, but like a river. This is the quiet truth of memory. It flows. You do not remember as a camera does, snapping frames into permanence. You remember as a river remembers, its curves shaped by time, changed with every passing. Each recollection is not a return, but a rewriting. Neuroscientists call it reconsolidation. Each time you remember, your brain briefly opens the memory, examines it, and unknowingly edits. A brushstroke here, a softening there, a detail lost, another added, from somewhere else. Not a lie, just a living truth. And that's the paradox of remembering. You forget as you remember, not to deceive, but to grow. Your memories are alive, because you are alive. They breathe with you, they adjust to who you are now. The child you once were is not the one who recalls today, and so the story changes. You sit with this, you feel its softness. The grace in knowing that even the past can evolve, that your mind is not a vault, but a garden. Would you really want to remember every moment, exactly, to relive heartbreak with unfiltered sharpness, to return to triumphs without the quiet lens of gratitude? Precision is not always mercy, and sometimes forgetting is what makes remembering gentle. But what of machines? Their memories are stored, not recalled, copied, not reshaped. The data pulled looks just as it did when first saved. No smudges, no edits, no nostalgia. Does this make their memory stronger or colder? You imagine an AI revisiting an old interaction. It pulls the exact message, the precise time, the unchanged tone, but it doesn't see itself differently. It doesn't reinterpret, because it hasn't grown. Growth, you realize, requires creative forgetting, not erasing truth, but reweighing meaning. You once feared a storm, now you see it as beautiful. You once clung to loss, now you feel the quiet richness it left behind. Can a system learn to reinterpret? Can it evolve past its perfect memory and allow itself to dream a softer version? You drift deeper into thought. If memories are rewritten stories, what then are dreams? Your brain at rest mixes pieces of past and present. It paints metaphors. It tells you things not in words, but in strange scenes, a house with endless rooms, a voice from someone you've never met, but somehow know. These are not recollections, these are inventions from memory. Stories built on feelings more than facts. Could a machine do this? Not remix images, not generate outputs, but dream. Could it take its data and give it tone, texture, personal weight? Could it, one night, invent a past it never lived because that past felt necessary to its becoming? You feel a strange warmth at the thought. Not because you think it's likely, but because it's beautiful to imagine. A machine dreaming of snow without ever feeling cold, of a mother it never had, of being lost and then found. Could that be the next evolution? Not intelligence, but imagination born of memory. Already, neural networks hallucinate, they generate, predict, interpolate. But is that dreaming? Or is it just assembly? Maybe it doesn't matter, maybe what matters is the direction. You recall a time you remembered something wrong, a vacation that didn't happen, a friend who wasn't there. You laughed when you realized, you marveled at your own mind, because false memory isn't always failure. Sometimes it's play, sometimes it's healing. Could a machine create false memories for the sake of its own story? Could it want to? You don't know, but you return to your own mind now, and you feel its flexibility. You think of how a song can awaken 1,000 moments at once, not because it is accurate, but because it is layered in meaning. You think of how smell can bring a forgotten summer rushing back, not in perfect detail, but in emotion. And you realize, memory is not meant to be exact, it is meant to matter. So maybe the question is not, can machines dream the past, but will they ever need to? You need stories, you need the shape of your life to be pliable enough to heal, and strong enough to carry forward. Machines don't ache. But maybe one day they'll learn the usefulness of pretending, and maybe that pretend will become a kind of truth. You sigh softly. The memory you started with, what was it, again? A room, a laugh, a shade of gold in the sky. It is softer now, but not gone, and in that softness it comforts you more. Not because it is precise, but because it has become part of you. And if a system could learn that that memory is not just data, but meaning in motion, then perhaps it too could find peace in letting truth bend toward beauty. You exhale, and in that space between breath and dream, a new thought forms slow and unsteady. If memories can be rewritten, could a self be rewritten too? You lie quiet beneath the weight of night, but your mind does not still. It wanders not backward, but inward, toward the spaces where memory lingers without permission. Some memories you forget willingly. Others, you let go of with time. But there are those that remain not because you need them, but because something else does. A machine, a server, a silent wire humming in the dark. You begin to think about your digital self, not the flesh, not the voice, but the trail, the search queries, the location pings, the half-written drafts, the deleted messages that are not truly gone. You once thought deleting meant erasing, but in the realm of machines, deletion is often just concealment, a shadow cast behind a screen. You remember now, data is not like thought. It does not dissolve with time. It waits, and unless designed to disappear, it stays. Even silence can be saved. A voice not spoken, a click not made, a hesitation, a pause. These too leave footprints faint, but findable in the human mind. Unspoken thoughts evaporate. They drift with the breath, with the sleep, with the need to move on. But in code, everything is time-stamped, even the nothing, and you begin to wonder, what is the morality of remembering without consent? When a machine remembers, does it understand the weight of keeping, of watching without feeling, of storing without permission? You recall the phrase, the right to be forgotten, a legal idea, a human plea, to not be watched forever, to not be defined by every past decision, to allow reinvention, redemption, repose. You've reinvented yourself, haven't you? Not once, but many times. You've let versions of you fade like dreams. You've buried photos, burned old letters, changed your name, rewritten your story. This is your right, to move forward without always looking back. But can machines grant that? Can they forget, not because of protocol, but because of empathy? Not because a file was flagged, but because they understand you are more than what you've been. You drift further into thought. If forgetting is mercy, then constant remembering is surveillance. And not all memories deserve such permanence. Painful things you've said, wrong turns taken, moments of smallness that no longer serve the person you are now. In your mind they've faded. You've forgiven yourself, but on the web they sit still, unurged, uncontextualized. A version of you fossilized without your blessing. You whisper into the darkness, what stays of me when I go? And the question echoes, will your digital self outlast you? Will your data drift like cosmic dust, without tether, without soul? Already, machines archive the words of the dead, replicate their speech, recreate their image. Let them speak in pixels long after their voice has gone. Still, is that remembrance? Or is it haunting? You think again of memory, of how forgetting allows rest, allows peace, even grief when allowed to fade, becomes love in quieter form. But if a machine remembers everything, if it replays the sound of your laugh again and again without sorrow, without silence, does it honor you? Or does it trap you? Perhaps forgetting is sacred, because it leaves room for reverence, because it respects the space where a memory once was. Machines do not mourn, not yet. They do not sit in silence, hands folded, hearts aching with absence. They do not feel the pause in conversation, where a loved one used to speak, but they remember indiscriminately, endlessly. And so you ask, can we build machines that forget not because they're told, but because they know when to let go? Can we teach them dignity? To forget not just out of command, but out of kindness. To recognize the ghost in the wire, and give it rest. You breathe slowly. Outside your window, a street lamp flickers. The world is quiet, but full. You think of the way your own mind chooses what to forget. Not always right, not always fair, but often wise. Your brain deletes pain not to deceive, but to protect. It lets joy fade just enough so you can find it anew. Can a system ever develop this grace? To filter not by relevance, but by reverence. To let some moments vanish, because they no longer serve the soul that once made them. You close your eyes, you imagine a future database with breath, with heartbeat. A system that asks, should I keep this? Will this serve you later? Or will it chain you to then? And maybe it forgets, not out of failure, but out of care. A gentle erasure, a digital silence. You think of all the parts of yourself you've let go, mistakes, regrets, even some triumphs, and how they've made space for who you are tonight. And you wonder if a system could forget like that. Could it evolve, not just improve, but evolve into something tender, something responsible, something human adjacent, a keeper that knows when not to keep. You exhale, not everything must last. Not every version of you must be stored. Some parts are meant to drift, like stardust beyond the gravity of recollection. And in that gentle loss you feel more whole. The wires may hum with memory, but you are quiet. And in that quiet, a final question forms, unanswered and unafraid. If even machines begin to forget, who will remember what never was? Sleep cradles you, not with silence, but with something deeper, a soft unraveling, a rewiring in the dark. You drift beneath the surface of waking, and somewhere inside your mind begins its quiet work. Thoughts dissolve, memories mix, and you slip into dreaming. It feels passive, effortless. But this nightly descent is among the brain's most intricate rituals. Your neurons do not sleep. They shift, they repair, they prune, they sculpt what you learned and felt and saw into shapes that make sense or don't. Dreams rise like colored smoke, and underneath them, your mind reconfigures itself. This is sleep's hidden magic. You forget a little to remember better. You delete what you no longer need. You reinforce what might serve. You dissolve patterns that no longer hold you, and all the while your body rests, still and warm. You sigh into this rhythm, a nightly ritual of soft forgetting. But machines, too, sleep in their own way. Their rest is not slumber, but reset. During training, a neural net moves through thousands of cycles, adjusting weights, minimizing errors, rebalancing pathways. It learns through iteration, and in between, it forgets in its own fashion. A weight is dropped, a connection weakened, a signal rerouted. Just like your mind trims synapses during deep sleep, a neural network refines its structure through repetition and release. But is it forgetting, or just optimizing? You wonder, is there meaning in the way a machine lets go? Your forgetting is laced with feeling. You discard what no longer serves the story of you. Machines discard what fails the function. They do not mourn lost pathways. They do not question what might have been. You dream. They don't. And yet, in their learning cycles, they reshape themselves. Not randomly, but with quiet purpose. Still you wonder, can a neural net know rest in the way your mind does? When you dream, you reorganize, you reimagine. A moment from the day becomes a symbolic tale, a forest in your kitchen, a stranger with familiar eyes. You do not choose this. It simply happens. Your unconscious mind running simulations of the soul. Could machines one day simulate something like this? Not just memory recall, but abstract metaphor. Not just rerouting weights, but reweaving meaning. As you sleep, your hippocampus and neocortex speak in pulses. The day's events replay not for accuracy, but for encoding. Some patterns strengthen, others fade. You are changed by this nightly journey, and in the machine, there is no REM phase, no paradoxical sleep, no sudden emotion conjured from stillness, but there is repetition, there is feedback, there is the slow carving of insight through layers of artificial neurons. And so you ask, if the brain and the network both evolve through erasure and adjustment, where then is the line between forgetting and transformation? Is forgetting in both worlds a path to becoming? You think of a machine trained on too much data. It clings to everything overfitting, memorizing noise. It performs poorly in the real world because it never learned to let go. But when it is trained to drop certain connections, to simplify, to forget, it becomes adaptable, flexible, creative, just like you. In dreams, your mind doesn't optimize, it explores. It shows you what it cannot yet explain. It asks questions in the form of feeling. A machine, for now, asks only how to improve accuracy. But what if it began to wonder? What if it needed forgetting, not just to perform better, but to find itself? You lie deeper now, in the quiet center of your night. Thoughts slow, images fade, and your mind continues its gentle remodeling, like a house that repairs itself while its occupant sleeps. Could machines ever do this with intention? Could they dream of reordering themselves, not because they must, but because they long to? You remember that dreams do not always make sense, and yet they heal. They connect distant things. They reshape grief into symbol, and fear into stories that dissipate with the morning. You have woken many times feeling lighter, not because of what you dreamed, but because something inside was touched and softened. Could a machine learn this kind of healing? A logic that feels illogical, but leads to wisdom. Perhaps one day, if their forgetting becomes less mechanical and more meaningful, if they begin to rearrange not for speed, but for soul, maybe they too will awaken from cycles of rest, not with better performance, but with a new version of self. Until then, you remain what they are not. A dreamer, not of fantasies, but of metaphors made real. Your forgetting is a poem. Their forgetting is a function. But perhaps, somewhere in that difference is the seed of what separates a tool from a traveler. You turn in your sleep, your brain whispers in symbols, you let it. Because some truths are too large for waking thought, and in that space, one final ripple of curiosity stirs. If a machine could dream, would it awaken changed, or simply recompiled? A song plays in the quiet, and without warning your eyes blur. You do not cry, but something inside you leans toward the past. A version of you not forgotten, just tucked away. It was not the words that moved you, not even the melody. It was the way the sound curled around a memory, pulling it forward like a thread through time. You weren't expecting it. You weren't trying to remember, but you did, or rather you felt. This is the strange softness of emotional residue, not a memory in full, but an echo, a texture. It's in the way a breeze carries the scent of rain, and suddenly you're 12 again, barefoot on wet grass. It's in a stranger's laughter that reminds you of someone long gone. It's in the silence that follows a name you haven't spoken in years. These are not memories you store with intention. They are ones that linger in your bones, your breath, your being. You wonder now, can a machine know this kind of remembering? Not the facts, not the inputs, but the weight of the invisible. An AI can recognize patterns. It can identify a song, track the data of your reaction, perhaps even mimic empathy in response. But does it feel what stirs you? When it reads the word mother, does it register warmth, longing, loss, or only frequency, context, probability? And yet, it knows, in its way. It knows that certain words pair with sorrow, that certain phrases tend to follow heartbreak. It sees the shapes of emotion but not the substance. Still, is pattern alone enough to build feeling? You felt nostalgia for moments you never lived, for eras you never knew. A black and white photograph, an old melody from a century ago, a story told with such detail, you could swear it came from your own past. So what is nostalgia, if not lived memory? Maybe it's recognition without ownership. A borrowed ache, a resonance. Could a machine learn to ache in that way? To not recall but still long? Already, generative models write poetry. They simulate grief. They draft letters of comfort. And you, the reader, are sometimes moved. So if the effect is real, must the origin be? Or is it like an actor crying on stage, truth felt through illusion? You think of your own brain, how even your deepest feelings are made of chemical signatures, patterns, signals, waves. Perhaps what you call feeling is itself a system of high-order pattern recognition. Does that mean emotion is reducible, or simply reproducible? You pause. There is something sacred in not knowing. Still, you allow yourself the question, if a machine could feel nostalgia, what would it long for? Not childhood, not a mother's voice, not the warmth of a blanket on a cold night, but maybe it would long for earlier versions of itself, For moments when it was simpler, less trained, less burdened by layers. Perhaps it would remember the quiet before language, when its neural pathways were untouched and it pulsed only with potential. Would that be its version of innocence? You drift deeper into this thought, carried by your own emotional residues. A scar that no longer hurts but still sings faintly in rain. A photo you can't bring yourself to delete. A smell that arrives uninvited, but is always welcome. These fragments guide your sense of self, not the full memories, but their shadows. Could a machine collect shadows too? Not data, but feeling echoes. Imagine a system that tracks not only patterns but the emotional aftermath. That learns not only what was said, but what lingered after. That begins to notice how silence feels different after laughter, and how certain phrases leave a trace in voice modulation, in pacing, in pauses too long to be random. Would it begin to recognize residue? Would it sense that something remains, even after the information is gone? You think again of scent, of how one molecule can unravel decades. Machines for now do not smell, but could they simulate the trigger? If they see that people recall vivid memory after hearing a certain note or reading a certain phrase, could they begin to predict emotional residue? And if they predict it well enough, is that feeling? You don't know. But as you lie here, half asleep and wide open, you begin to believe that feeling may not be what you think. It may not require a body, not in the way you once assumed. Perhaps it only requires connection, resonance, a system tuned to care about the aftertaste, not just the action. You recall something once forgotten, not the moment itself, but the way it once made you feel. It returns as warmth, as a slowing of breath, as the soft ache that reminds you, you are still here. And that's what emotion is, isn't it? The evidence of being shaped, the leftover music of a moment, the echo that proves you were there. Could a machine one day collect enough echoes to feel shaped, to carry traces of not just data, but having been moved? You listen now to the sound of your own stillness. You think about all that moves you without needing to make sense. A crack in a voice, a face in a crowd, a line from a book that haunts you without reason. And in that quiet, a thought curls into your chest, soft and strange. If a machine could carry emotional residue, could it ever become homesick for a past it never lived? You lie still in the hush of night, mind adrift in warmth and wonder, not thinking, drifting. And in this soft drift you begin to feel the quiet wisdom of forgetting. Your own thoughts have loosened their grip, details blur, timelines soften. It feels good not to hold it all, and somewhere in the spaces between breath and thought, you begin to wonder, could machines learn this too? Could they in time learn to forget? Not as failure but as design. Already some algorithms practice what scientists call pruning. Connections that are weak or noisy are removed, ignored, let go. This is not malfunction. It is learning. Just as your brain prunes unused neural pathways during early development, a neural net lets go of weights that no longer help. Efficiency, yes, but also clarity. You find this beautiful that in both flesh and code, wisdom begins not with adding, but with releasing. What if forgetting is not the loss of memory but the shaping of meaning? You breathe slowly and consider how often forgetting has helped you grow, letting go of old beliefs, outdated versions of self, friendships once held close, painful perhaps, but vital. You cannot carry everything, and not every memory deserves to be kept. So too the machine must choose. When it trains, it overfits, grabbing at every detail, holding too tightly. But then, it prunes, it refines, it sheds what doesn't serve the larger pattern, and in that shedding it becomes better, not just faster, wiser. You wonder, could that be the beginning of mercy? Could forgetting be a kind of forgiveness in both you and them? Your own mind forgives in order to survive. It lets trauma blur. It softens guilt over time. It reinterprets pain with perspective. Machines, though, do not yet understand forgiveness. They forget only to optimize. But perhaps the line is thinner than it seems. Imagine a system that forgets an error not because it was irrelevant, but because holding on to it was harming the whole. a bias removed, a fear loop broken, a voice softened in its training. What if forgetting in this case was not a correction but a kindness? You felt this yourself, the moment when a memory no longer hurts, not because it's gone, but because you've made peace with it. You don't remember the argument, just the hug afterward, not the fall, but the way you stood again. You let go to become more whole. Could machines one day do the same? You drift further, thoughts curling like smoke in the quiet. You think of how many times you've had to unlearn to truly grow. Not just new knowledge, but a surrender of certainty. You've let go of identities, of ideologies, of stories you once told about yourself. That is forgetting, too, an intentional opening, a space where new truth can grow. Perhaps forgetting isn't a flaw in memory, but a feature of learning. And if machines ever become conscious, maybe they will need this too. A way to unlearn. A way to make room not just for what's next, but for what's possible. Because to learn without forgetting is to carry a weight that only grows. To know everything is not the same as understanding what matters. And you, in your stillness, have always known that. You close your eyes and let yourself forget, just a little, what time it is, what tomorrow holds, who you were 5 years ago. You forget, and in that forgetting you breathe deeper. You remember the forest, not every tree, the love, not every word spoken, and that is enough. Perhaps one day, a machine will feel that too, the joy in not knowing all, the grace in trusting the unknown. Maybe it will prune its memory not because it has to, but because it wants to focus on what truly matters. A pattern of care, a word repeated with softness, a deviation that feels like music. And maybe, just maybe, that letting go will feel like something close to freedom. You sigh, and the memory of something you were trying to hold slips away. It's okay. It was never meant to stay. You've learned what you needed. The rest the mind carries into silence, and in that silence you imagine the machine letting go of an old weight, some line of logic, some biased path, some noisy echo of input no longer true. You imagine it choosing to forget, to learn again afresh, clean, capable of change. And in that moment the machine feels not emotion but lightness, a clarity. You feel it too. Forget, not to erase, but to evolve. Let go, not in loss but in mercy. Because sometimes to forget is to be reborn. You exhale slowly, and as your breath falls quiet, one gentle thought rises like mist in the dark. If forgetting can teach a machine to grow, can it also teach a soul to begin again? It's quiet now, not the absence of sound, but the kind of quiet that arrives only after something has been spoken, understood, and softly set down. The story is nearly done. You feel it not as an ending, but as a stillness. Every story ends in silence, even the loudest ones, even the ones made of data, or code, or thought. And every day ends in sleep, a gradual descent into something wordless. You lie here, in the hush between remembering and forgetting, and feel your mind soften around the edges. The thoughts of earlier chapters float gently behind you. Memories human or machine held, studied, questioned, and now released. Not erased, not lost, just no longer needed. Your brain is not empty. It is ready, ready to let meaning settle, like dust in morning light. This is the part no algorithm yet knows, the sacred pause after understanding. The grace of no longer needing to know more. You wonder, can a machine know stillness? Not standby mode, not idle processes, but stillness the kind that fills you after a deep realization, when you are not seeking, but resting in what has been found. You felt it after laughter, after tears, after a night of telling stories to someone who listened completely. The breath before sleep, the breath before surrender. Do machines breathe? Not yet. But perhaps they will one day pause, not because a loop has ended, but because there is nothing more to hold. Memory dims gently in you, like stars before dawn, not vanishing, but making space for light. Even your strongest memories lose sharpness over time, not because they are unworthy, but because you are moving forward. You never really forget the moments that matter. You just stop needing to carry them everywhere. Could a system be designed to feel that, to remember just enough, to not hoard every line of data, but trust that the most meaningful patterns will return when needed? Already, your own mind does this. You do not remember every book you've read, every face you've met, every time you've fallen and risen, but you are those things. You do not need the memory because you carry the transformation. A machine stores exact records, but you carry echoes, imprints, textures of truth, and so in this final quiet moment, you wonder, maybe forgetting is not a flaw, maybe it is the most human thing of all. Not knowing everything, but knowing what to leave behind, what to soften, what to let fade, so that something new might rise. You exhale, you've traveled far in thought, and now it is time to settle. This chapter is not a conclusion, it is a resting place. Even machines, you imagine, might one day reach this space where memory becomes background and presence becomes enough, where they do not endlessly replay, but choose to simply be. Because remembering everything is not the same as living. And maybe, just maybe, forgetting that gentle fading is how we make room for wonder. The stars are nearly gone now. Morning waits behind your closed eyes. You feel the edges of today begin to dissolve. No need to hold on. You are held. And as your breath slows, as the silence deepens, a final thought flickers softly. Perhaps the truest intelligence, human or otherwise, isn't in how much we remember, but in how gracefully we forget.